Okay, so we're going to take a look at how to consume items in our game today. Now, we're only going to look at the consume functionality of it, and then the actual effects of the items would be a different video. So this one's going to be a pretty quick one. Now, first, let's open up our content drawer and go to our third person. And in our blueprints, open up our BP third person character. We already have our event consume item. This is an interface function. Now we need to have an actual function that runs every time this interface function is called whenever an item gets consumed. So we're going to go to our BPC backpack, right click and click on edit. This will open up our backpack component. And we're going to create a new function to handle the consumption of items. So I'm going to create a new function and I'm going to name this consume item from backpack. So in our consume item from backpack, we want to have an input. We're going to name this index. And now we're going to drag in our backpack struct. And then we're going to do a get, and we're going to do a get a reference, and then plug that index in there. And we're going to drag off of this get, and we're going to go ahead and break it. And here we need to do a Boolean check. We need to check if that quantity that we're consuming out of, is it 1 or is it more than 1? Because if it is 1, then we want to completely get rid of that item from our backpack. But if it is more than 1, we only want to decrement 1 from it. So let's go ahead and do a branch here. Connect this to the execution pin. And the branch is going to be very simple. We're going to drag in our slot quantity and we're going to check if it is equal to 1. If it is equal to 1, that means this is the last piece in the backpack. And as soon as we consume this, we need to get rid of it. So let's go ahead and plug that into our condition. And if it is equal to 1, then we are going to go ahead and drag in our backpack struct. And we're going to do a remove index. And set this to true. And then also our index would be this index right here. Instead of dragging a line through, I'm just going to drag off of this and say get index. And I have it right here. When we remove an index, it's going to go to 14 slots. So we want to now go ahead and resize our backpack. So let's go ahead and drag in our backpack struct. And we're going to do a resize. Plug this in here just like so. And then the max back slots, we're just going to plug it in here. There we go. So this is going to remove the index of that item, and then it's going to resize it so we get completely new slots. And again, this resizing shouldn't affect our existing inventory, and you'll see it in just a moment. However, if the slot quantity is more than 1, for our false, we're going to go ahead and drag off of this get. And then here, we're going to go ahead and say set members in S backpack. Let me do a reroute here quickly, just to keep it nice and neat. Connect this to false, and then select the set members, and then I'm going to select only the slot quantity. And here, I'm going to drag off of the slot quantity, and then I'm going to subtract 1, because we're going to consume 1 at a time. And the result of that will be connected to the slot quantity. Just like this. And then again, I'm going to just go ahead and set this to resize. It doesn't really matter. And here, I'm going to set up our update save game. And we're going to go ahead and do a return on this, add a return node. Compile and save. And this is all you have to do to consume an item from your backpack. In our third person character, I'm going to drag in my BPC backpack here. And then off of this, I'm going to search for consume item from backpack. And then plug this in here. After we consume the item from the backpack, we want to now refresh our UI so the new total quantity is properly visible. So we already have a function here that we created to refresh our backpack. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that and then just paste it down here. Refresh backpack. There you go. Now the function is pretty much complete as soon as we define which is the item index of the item that we're trying to consume. Now, currently we are only sending in the item info information. We are not sending in the item index information, which is very important. So we're gonna have to go ahead and set that up. So in our content drawer, we're going to go to our core folder, go to UI, and in here, first let's start with our context menu. So if I open up my context menu, and if I go to my graph, I have the consume item here. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new variable and name this item index, make this of type integer, and then make it instance editable and also expose on spawn. compile and save it. Now on the consume item, we want to send in this index information so the player will have that information. So let's go ahead and do that. So if I double click on this consume item, because this is an interface function, it should open up our interface function just like this. Select the consume item, and then here in the inputs, we're going to add in a new input, and this would be our item index. And I'm going to go ahead and set this as an integer, compile and save it. We no longer require this interface to be open, so I'm going to go ahead and close it. And now I have the item index. So let's go ahead and drag the item index and then plug it in here, just like so. And again, make sure this item index variable that we just created is instance editable and also expose on spawn. Now in our third person character, now we should have that item index available in our event. So we can just drag this and connect it here. So that's first part that is completed. Now we need to define, or we need to send in this item index information from where we create this context menu. We create the context menu in our actual backpack main. So let's go to our backpack main. And the function is actually open subcontext menu. So this is where we're actually creating the context menu. There's our item index that we just created. So we need to now define this. For that, we need to update our interface function of event create the context menu. So again, double click the interface function. Here, let's go ahead and add in our new variable for item index. Make that as an integer, compile and save, close this out. And now we should have the item index. Let's go ahead and drag this and then plug it in here just like so. And I'm going to double click on this line to create a reroute just to straighten it out. So now we have defined this item index in our context menu as well. Now we need to go to the function where we are calling this context menu so we can input this item index itself. And we call this context menu from our item slot. So let's go ahead and open up our item slot and go to the graph, and where we have the on mouse button down, this is where we're creating the context menu. So right now we have the item index. So let's go ahead and define this. So I'm just going to drag off of this and I'm going to just promote to a variable. This will create the variable for item index. And then now I can drag this and plug it into here as well. It's the same thing. And then let's make sure this is instance editable and also expose on spawn. It's very important that these are instance editable and expose on spawn. So now here we have defined the item index here as well. So whatever the item index here is, that's exactly what it's going to pass over to our context menu. So last but not least, we need to define the item index in our item slot. So we're going to go back to our backpack. Our backpack main. And where we are actually creating our item slot, which is basically add items to inventory. This is where we're actually creating the item slot itself. If I right click and refresh, I should have the item index here. Let's go ahead and drag the item index and plug it into this input, just like so. And I'll create a new line item for the item index. Now let's go back and we have our item index here. We just need to now drag in our array index and then plug it into this item index. And this is all you have to do to define that specific slot that the player is selecting. Now, we want this to work when we are actually filtering it as well. So if I go ahead to my slot widget here, this one, and then select the slot widget here, and this slot widget, all four of these, and if I right click and if I refresh node, every one of them will have an item index. And now all I have to do is drag this array index and then plug it into this item index. And also drop in a reroute in there. Just like this. Let me quickly explain what's going on. So when we first open up our inventory, we're going to get all the content of our backpack and we're going to go through it one by one. At that point in time, we know exactly which item is in which index. We're getting that index information and we're sending it to our item slot when we are creating the item index. Now the item slot is going to take that item index information and then send it over when we're creating the context menu. This is basically when we right click on it, it's going to say, it's going to define which item did we just right click on, which item index did we just right click on. This is the information that we're sending it over. And back in our context menu creation function, that's the item index that we just right clicked on. We're sending that information over to our context menu. Our context menu is basically our equip and drop button or consume and drop button. Here, we're going to tell the player, hey, tell the player which item index did the player just click consume on. And then the player will then take that information, send it to the backpack, and the backpack will then grab that item index and then subtract 1 from it. Let me show you in action. If I go ahead and press play, in game, I should have some inventory available already. So there it is. I have 4 pieces of this chocolate and some beans. If I right click and if I click on consume, you should see it goes to 3. And then consume, it'll go to 2, 1, and as soon as it hits 0, it'll disappear from my inventory. It's not, the quantity is 0, so it's going to automatically get out of our inventory. So let's go ahead and pick up a couple more items here. Let's get some chocolate bar. Let's get some of this weapon. Here. There we go. And now, again, we have 2 of this can of pop. I'm going to go ahead and consume 2 of this pop. And that 2 cans of pop disappears, but this 1 can still stays. And again, chocolate bar, if I consume this 1 chocolate bar, that chocolate bar will disappear, but the other one with the 5 will still stay. And again, I can consume at will. I can consume one of this, doesn't really matter. And as soon as I'm done consuming, it will start disappearing. So our entire inventory is working very well. At the same time, I want to also address a bug that's in the game. So right now, if you take a look at our inventory is actually full. And then we also have 2 weapons that is equipped. So instead of having 15 items in our backpack, now if I were to unequip these 2 items, it's going to go to 17, which the game won't allow us to do. So if I go ahead and right click on this and unequip, nothing really happens. At least it doesn't look like something is happening. But if I close the game, and if I go ahead and press play, and if I press tab, you see that that pistol never got added to our inventory, but it did get removed from our loadout. So, which is a bug. So we definitely want to squash this one, right? So what we want to do is we want to put in a check. When we unequip a weapon, we want to check to see if we have any empty slots in our backpack. If there are empty slots in our backpack, then we can go ahead and allow the player to unequip. If there is no empty slots in our backpack, then we don't allow the player to unequip. And it's a simple fix because we already have the functions for it. So where we have our remove equip weapon, let's go ahead and pull this back a little. And in our backpack, we already have a function that actually looks for the next available slot. So in the find next available slot function, you can see that it goes through every single slot and it lets us know which one of these slots is the empty slot. And if there's no empty slots, then it's going to tell us it's not successful, and it's also going to tell us the empty slot number is -1. We're going to use this. So in our third-person character, I'm going to drag in our backpack, and then here I'm going to search for find next available slot, and then go ahead and plug this in here, and then let's go ahead and do a branch. And only when this function is success, only when there's an empty slot available, we want to go ahead and update the animation and allow the player to remove the weapon. If not, we just want to print a string for now and then name state no empty slot available. So let's go ahead and test this out. So in game, right now, I have no weapons here. Let's go ahead and equip this pistol up here, so which is good. Now let's go ahead and pick up something so we can fill up our inventory. Okay, there you go. Our inventory is full. Now if I go ahead and right click and unequip the weapon, it's going to say no empty slot available. So that means it won't allow us to unequip the weapon. But if I go ahead and right click on this AR4 and if I go in and say equip, it should technically switch the weapon. So if I go ahead and select the pistol, you can see the AR4 get equipped and then the pistol actually gets added to the bottom of the list. Same thing here. Let's go and equip the second AR4 and now we have 3 pistols. So that is working fine. Now if I go ahead and consume 2 of this soda, now I have an empty slot. Let's go ahead and unequip this weapon and there's our AR4 properly functioning. So folks, I hope you like this consume item function, and we also took the opportunity to squash a bug. Instead of having to create a separate video for itself, I decided to just quickly take care of the bug right here. Thank you again for stopping by. If this video had helped you in any way, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel because we have more and more of this content coming up. So if you can, share it with somebody. It will help the channel grow, and I really appreciate your time here. I'll catch you on the next one.